All right, you heard him there, and let's speak to our political correspondent, Mzwandile Mbeje, live for us in studio. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So after 10 years, this is big, the second time South Africa is hosting it. We're going to have huge heads of state, including the head of the second economy in the world. But what's tangible in terms of BRICS 10 years later?
I think there's a number of things that you can look at when you look at this BRICS since its formation 10 years ago. Today we talk about the new development BRICS Bank. So even 3 or 4 years ago that didn't exist. The fact that we now have the alternative source of wanting funding in the form of the BRICS Bank. So for me, that is really another tangible that we can speak about.
And this is interesting, they're talking about a visa-free policy. Is that viable, that we cut visas when we're not even doing that across Africa?
You know, if you look at the relations in terms of trade relations, particularly South Africa and China. So not only is South Africa the biggest trading partner of China right now, even in the whole continent. So this kind of interaction that has been happening over the years has really increased since this relationship of BRICS happened. And as much as the trade amongst all these countries may not be that high, but since that relationship was formed, you can see it's going up. And then with the issue of visa being abolished for these countries, it will make movement of people much easier. And of course, you know, once movement of people is easier, so then trade increases. But of course, as for the African continent, that issue remains a sticking point. South Africa actually is one of the slowest countries when it comes to the issue of visas. But I think they have explanation for that, because as the advanced economy on the continent, we tend to be the magnet. So whatever we do, we have to do it very carefully.
Yeah, and I don't think we could allow members of the BRICS to come in without allowing our neighbours. But let's look at some of the other issues. So you mentioned the bank. Now, let's be honest, imagine the political fallout if China came in and said we will fund Eskom and other SOEs. A lot of people would start talking immediately about economic colonialism. Isn't the bank a backdoor for China to fund SOEs, to gain that foothold in our economy?
But if you look at the kind of role that China is playing at the moment, in fact, well, I would say detractors would say China is reinventing itself as an acceptable colonial power. But if you look at the kind of investment they are putting into the continent, it's quite huge. And on the African continent, we do need a lot of infrastructure. I mean, look what they've done in the rest of the continent, putting up infrastructure. They've built roads, they've built airports. I'm sure if you were traveling about 5 or even 10 years ago, most of the airports in the African countries were really old. But now most of them have changed. As much as they want to have a role in South Africa, given our complexity and of course our sophistication, so they would have to find a different way of engaging with South Africa. That's why that issue you are raising is very important.
So you're saying we've got a strong, I guess, checks and balance. Xi Jinping would be coming here tonight. We'll take live visuals as soon as we can from Rwanda, where I think, yes, China is again funding an airport, I believe. The question is, China would want this relationship, this deepened relationship with Africa, to help it surely and help its exporters because of the trade war with the US now. So will it be beneficial for Africa?
It will be beneficial for Africa. If you look at the choice of countries that he's visiting before arriving in South Africa, he carefully chose, I think, 3 regions. He went first to Senegal, that is West Africa, Rwanda, that is East Africa, and then it's coming to South Africa, that is SADC. And of course, on his way home is Mauritius. So you can see that the kind of influence that China wants on this continent, so they want it in a manner that will not only perhaps be be seen to be benefiting them alone, but the region must benefit.
Choosing the powerhouses of each region.
You have actually mentioned the issue of the airport, I think in Senegal or Rwanda. Actually, many more countries on the continent have had their airports built by China. I was in Nigeria about 2 weeks ago with the president. That airport in Abuja is under construction, and guess who's building it? Is the Chinese. Yeah. So you can see that they are here. And of course, if you look at the President Xi Jinping, his policy is more aggressive compared to the past Chinese president. He's more aggressive in terms of the international outlook. So China used to just stand on the side and perhaps watch what's happening, but now it's more interventionist. I mean, they even have the base in Djibouti, the first base in Africa.
All right, well, I think there's going to be analysis throughout this entire week. Already a lot of controversy, people calling for the arrest of Narendra Modi, but he will come in and no doubt feel free to participate in this week's events. Thank you very much for that. Mzwandile Mbeje, our politics reporter